Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, everyone can hear me clearly. Oh, let me go back up. My name is Brian Hartstein, and with me is Chris Roger. We're with Bayntree Wealth Advisors, and today we're going to do our third quarter 401k educational webinar. And we have a lot of fun doing these. We always try to pick topics that we think are relevant and ones that we think that'll provide value each quarter. And so for this quarter, what we thought we'd do is, as we work with a lot of different 401k plans, we hear some of the same questions or issues come up over and over again. So some of them have some validity to them, but some of them we hear and we have to re-educate people on maybe why what they're hearing doesn't make sense, or what they're thinking isn't probably the best approach in terms of how to utilize and help make their 401k account grow. So we thought we'd address in the third quarter for our 401k educational webinar, debunking common 401k myths, or some of the things that we hear over and over again, and that we try to talk to participants about and help educate them, and hopefully what we feel is a better methodology going forward. So that's what we're going to tackle here today. And again, we always record these. And when we're done, we send the recordings back out to your HR departments, and they will disseminate those to everyone as well. So if you have to drop off in the middle, or you want to listen to this again, or you know somebody that wanted to listen to this but couldn't be on today, just know that we are recording these and you'll have the ability to listen at your leisure going forward in the future. So, and also one of the things we like to say is if you do have questions, or you're thinking of questions as we go through this, you do have a Q&A box. So if you have a question, type it into the Q&A box and we'll try to tackle those at the end. If we can't get to yours, we'll hopefully be able to answer that in a one-on-one fashion after the webinar. So again, as we work with our 401k plans and as you work with us, this is just a quick synopsis of your Bayntree team and who's dedicated to working with you on your 401k plan. Again, myself, Brian Hartstein. Today with me is Chris Roger.
Hey, everybody.
And we have Rena Blanco and Jessica Amaya. So if you have questions, you're probably going to access one of the members of our team here. And again, we always like to tell people, as we are advisors of the 401k plan that you're a part of, you have no cost for utilizing our services here at Bayntree. If you have questions in regards to your account, if you have financial planning related questions, if you need help in any way, that's what we're here for. We want to make sure that everybody has a very positive experience in working with the plan and utilizing it to be a critical piece in the retirement planning puzzle and hopefully become retirement ready. So again, call us, email us if we can be of help. We've actually had people stop in our offices as well. So we're here to help you. And again, there's no cost to you as an employee for the plans that we work with. So we're here to help. So real quick, one of the questions that we get over and over again is, for plans that have a company match, should I contribute just enough for the company match? Well, the first thing we always say is, if your plan has a company match, always try to take advantage of it if you can afford to do so. At least contribute up to the amount where you're going to be able to obtain that company match, because we look at it as the company match is free money to you as the employee. The company's matching you money on your own contributions as a reward for being a good employee and for trying to save for retirement. So if you can afford it, always try to take advantage of that free money. Number one, it's a positive return on your money from day one without doing anything in your account. And we really don't know of any other place where you can find that type of rate of return or free money. So we say, if you see it, grab it. The second thing we like to say is, look, if you're trying to save and you're using your 401k to do that, or maybe outside accounts to do that, we usually think of a 10 to 15% savings rule of thumb. Try to save 10 to 15% of whatever your compensation is and whatever your earn is into some type of an account throughout the year. And because that will help you be what we call retirement ready. Now, what does retirement ready mean? Well, that can be a little more complex, but if you have questions about whether you're ready for retirement or you're on track or you have the right plan in place, that's what we're here for. Call us, talk to Chris. He works with employees all the time and making sure not only their questions are answered, but they have a strategy, a plan in place, and that they can become retirement ready. So Chris, I don't know if you can add on that.
Not necessarily. I think the amount that you can save is going to be different than your neighbor and the next person. So if you don't know exactly how much you can contribute, that could be something that you just shoot us an email and we can set up a time to learn a little bit more about your specific situation.
Yeah, we always like to say too, if you're working and you receive a raise, a great way to work that into your 401k contribution is that if you, let's say you get a 3% raise this year, well, take 2 for yourself and raise your 401k contribution by 1%. That way you really never had the money, you don't miss it. You still get the benefit of the raise, but then you're also helping yourself save more for retirement. Or maybe put 2 in your 401k and keep 1 for yourself. But when you get those types of raises, think of ways that you could say, hey, I'd like to use some of that, but maybe there's a way that we could use that to increase the amount that I'm saving for retirement and specifically in the 401k contribution. So just one little point of planning there we always like to point out. So again, what's important, I think, saving a certain amount every year, whether it's in a 401k or outside of that, is a great rule of thumb, maybe 10 to 15% of your salary.
Okay, so this I wanted to just touch on, Brian and I wanted to touch on basically just investing in a money market account or cash inside of your 401k. So there might be a couple different reasons why someone would just put cash into their 401k. The first one being that they're not comfortable taking any risk. And like Brian just touched on a little earlier, even if your investments don't actually grow and make any money in the market, just the match itself, you're getting an X% return just based on what your match is. So no matter what, you're coming out on top by putting in money and receiving the match. So even if you just invested in cash, you're still receiving a positive rate of return and seeing that the funds grow. Now, the other reason why individuals might just keep everything in cash could be because they don't know exactly how to invest the 401k, or they're unsure how they should allocate their 401k. Should they be risky? Should they be more conservative? Or should they be somewhere in the middle, right? So sometimes just not knowing exactly what you want to do, or maybe you just don't have the right information, putting in cash and just taking advantage of the match might make sense until you figure out exactly with what you're comfortable with. So to the first point of just understanding your risk tolerance, that's going to basically just reflect on how much drawdown, or from the high point in your account to the low point in your account, are you comfortable seeing? Are you only comfortable with maybe losing potentially 5%? Or maybe if you have 10, 15, 20 years to retirement, you might be comfortable seeing more drawdown in your account. But understanding exactly emotionally how you'll react to the market if there is any volatility is very important. And that ties into the risk tolerance. So if you're retiring next week, maybe it's a good idea to be in cash, because maybe you want to develop a game plan with the money in that account, and that money that's in your 401k you're going to use for retirement. But like I touched on earlier, if you have a long time before you think about accessing these funds, then most likely it's probably not going to be the best thing for you to just have everything allocated to cash.
Go forward here.
We'll go to the next one here. And so this is an example of what's called dollar cost averaging. So,
and again, we always hear this like, hey, the market's coming down. Should I stop making contributions because the market's dropping? Is that a good idea to stop my contributions? And this is a slide, and Chris is going to address why we feel you don't want to stop making contributions if the market falls. It's actually maybe more beneficial to you to increase those, or at least keep those steady.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we field those kind of questions all the time. If the market's down 5, 10%, should I, maybe you just want to continue putting it in cash, or should I buy into the market? So what you're looking at here is 2 different types of investment strategies. Okay, the orange strategy is going to look at investing $1,000 a month over X amount of months over a certain period of time, okay, over 8 months here in this example, okay? So that's the orange. So you can see in the point 1, you're investing $1,000 the first month, and you're paying $10 a share, okay? And then next month, that $10 is worth $14 a share. So now you're not going to buy as many shares with that same $1,000 that you have, because you're buying at a higher point. But then if you look in month 3 in March, the value goes down. So now your $1,000 is buying more than you did the month prior in February and in January. And you could see this process repeated for the remainder of this chart in this example here. Now, the nice part is comparing that with just investing in the blue on the upper scenario in this example, just the 8,000 up front, you're buying everything all at the same price. So you're dealing with those highs and lows. But the nice part is, especially with the 401k plans, and Brian and I always say this, even if the market drops, it's actually good for you as long as you're still contributing to the plan and you have a couple years to retirement, because that means you're buying the investments at a discount. So it definitely helps in the long haul to consistently add to your 401k and continue to buy the investments inside of your account, even if the account value does drop in value.
Right. And so if you have a time horizon where you've got at least some years to retirement, think of the market falling as the market on sale. You're buying it on sale, and over time, it's going to be cheaper for you to do it that way as you put money in from your paycheck every pay period. And so we always feel like the power of dollar cost averaging in a 401k is extremely powerful.
Okay. And another question that we get all the time, and we kind of touched on this a little bit on the last slide, is if the market does happen to fall, should we just get out of everything and go to cash? So jumping back to what we touched on earlier, the biggest thing in regards to this question would be your risk tolerance. What are you comfortable with seeing your portfolio swing to the downside? Okay. So if you understand that you're only comfortable handling a 10% drawdown, right? Maybe at that point, that's where you could potentially look to make some changes. But without having a good understanding of exactly how you feel about risk, more times than not, it just makes sense to continue to stay invested into the 401k plan. Because I'm sure everyone on here has heard the term, you buy low, you sell high. But what happens in reality? Most people buy high and sell low. Now, it's easier said than done, but part of if the market does fall back, you could potentially be selling at a low point for less than what you paid for it. So the two biggest components here, number one, understanding your risk tolerance and how much risk are you comfortable taking inside of your 401k plan. And the second thing as well, and we touched on this again, understanding how long you have to be invested, meaning when are you going to potentially use these accounts in the future. So Brian, I don't know if you have anything else to add there.
Well, it's funny is we always hear sometimes people who they get concerned when the market falls and they move out. And then, Chris, I'll be that person. I'll say, well, Chris, when should I get back into the market? Now I'm sitting in a money market fund. Gosh, what's the best time to get back in? And what's your answer?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you. There's no perfect time. There's no perfect answer to that.
Right. So removing the emotion sometimes is a very good way to build your plan going forward. Again, most plans have target date or risk-based portfolios you could use. But if you want to build your own, then just understand your level of risk you're comfortable with and understand your time horizon.
Okay. And again, just touching on another topic that Brian and I wanted to cover, and reason being, we get asked this kind of question all the time. Hey, I don't want the target date fund, and I'm not really looking for a risk-based portfolio. I kind of want to make my own. And more times than not, how people go on and pick their funds inside of their 401k are which ones have been performing the best. So we wanted to walk through historically since 2007, the top performing asset class each year. Okay, and you can see each asset class is coded in a different color. So if you look at the top of the chart, you can see almost every single year, the top performing asset class is different than the year prior, okay? Now, we remember back in 07 and 08 was the big debt crisis. That's where, a lot of people reacted emotionally to their 401k, and they could have gotten hurt big time if they didn't understand their risk tolerance and have a game plan. But when you look at just how the account or the investment has done in the past, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to do very well in the future. And if you look in 2012, the top performing asset class was global equity, so it was international stocks. So in 2012, if you moved everything to international, and then you left it invested for 13, 14, 15, Well, 2013, you still would have done all right. But the following 3 years after that, look where international is, all the way second to the last. So just because something is performing well right now doesn't mean that that run is going to continue to last moving forward. So that's where we get a lot of questions. Well, then how should I pick my funds? I don't want to be in the target date fund or the risk-based account. So how should I pick my investments? And the reason from our end, we always recommend diversification. And the reason why we recommend diversification is because no one knows exactly which asset class is going to be the best. So that's why you have a little piece of a lot of different asset classes. So that way you can participate in different gains as different asset classes do well over different time periods.
Yeah, and I think, like Chris says, once you have that game plan or that blend of investments when you've diversified in place, consistency is probably just as important, because as you can see here, and Chris highlighted, you're not going to be able to pick the best performing asset class in a future year. You might get lucky one year, but if you try to do it by past performance, your shot at picking the best is probably very slim. So having that game plan and being consistent with your game plan will let you harness the power of all these different parts of the market, which eventually they will do well. We just don't know the year in which one is going to outperform the other. Nobody does. So we see a lot of people that, say, hey, I'm going to pick this best performing fund. Look at how they did in 2017. And I can pretty much tell you it probably won't be the top for 18. Small chance, but most likely it won't. So again, understand what you've built and be consistent with your game plan going forward. So another question that we get quite a bit, for many plans have what's called a loan provision in the plan where people can borrow from their own 401k accounts. So it is a nice feature for a plan to have in case there's an emergency or in case somebody needs to access it. But we always highly discourage people from using a loan. There's a few different reasons for that. So the question is, hey, I can take a loan from my account, should I? We would probably say if you have the ability to borrow or get money from other sources, you should. Number one, you should always have an emergency reserve built up of 3 to 6 months of living expenses, just as emergency. We understand for some people that's very difficult, but that should be a goal for you to build that, because if you do need money, it's a great place to be able to go get it. 401k should really be thought of as retirement savings only. That's why we always say if you can plan other sources of emergency funds, you should do so. Number one, you have to pay the loan back into your account, and it's got to be paid back into under a 5-year period, unless it's for a first-time home purchase. Then you can make it a little bit longer. The other issue is that sometimes when people move from job to job, if they have an outstanding loan in their 401k and they leave their employer and they move their account, they have one of two things happen. They either have to pay back that loan immediately, or that loan is going to be considered a distribution in the year that they moved, and they're going to pay taxes on that in that given year. Plus, if you're under 59 and a half, you're going to pay an extra 10% penalty as well. So again, can you do it? Yes, but it's not necessarily the best place to borrow from. And the other thing that we've seen is it become habit forming, is that people might borrow 1 year, it could be a couple of years to pay back, and then they do it again, and then you do it again. So again, we always like to think of the 401k as an excellent retirement vehicle, but it's meant for retirement. So if you can get around that kind of mental hurdle of not using the loan, but thinking of it as just for retirement plan purposes only, I think you'll be in a much better place going forward.
Yeah, and just another thing to touch on too, if you are thinking about taking a loan from your 401k, you have to think once you do that, that money is no longer in the account as well. So you're missing the opportunity for the investments to grow, and you have to pay it back. So like Brian said, very rare does it make sense to take a loan from your 401k. And if you have specific questions to your situation, that's where you can just reach out to us individually, and we'll do our best to help.
Sure. The next steps that we kind of covered, some of these you might want to address, but one of the things, one of our partners, Andrew, wrote a phenomenal book called Climbing the Retirement Mountain. If you'd like a free copy, just email us or call us. We'll ship it out to you at no cost. I think it's a great book that highlights different parts of retirement planning and how you might want to get yourself ready to climb that retirement mountain. And I'll let Chris talk about this a little bit further, but when we gauge our own personal level of risk, and we always urge people to do that every couple of years, because as you get older and your family changes, your level of risk will change. But John Hancock, who is a great plan provider or principal, they've got some great tools, but we have a wonderful risk diagnostic tool that we use here that's available to any employee that wants to utilize it. And Chris can tell you a little bit about that as well.
Yep. So if you head to our website, www.bayntree.com, you can click the Riskalyze towards the bottom of the page. And what this does is, from our end, it gives us a risk number. So a 1 would be more conservative, money in the bank or cash, the money market like we touched on earlier. And someone that may have 20, 30 years to retirement might be more aggressive, so as a 99. So we always encourage, and I think we made it clear, one of the most important things to understand about yourself when investing in the 401k is your risk tolerance, right? Time horizon is a little easier to understand because that's just when are you going to use the funds or potentially retire. But the risk side, this gives us a good idea on how individuals emotionally feel about risk. And then from there, we can help give advice and recommendations on which funds to pick inside of your 401k plan.
Yeah, and also if you have other accounts outside of the 401k, you can also use this risk profile to understand what risk you're taking in the other accounts and perhaps how they integrate with your 401k account. Because just because somebody's a specific risk number doesn't necessarily mean that they should take that risk more or less with the 401k. It depends on how the rest of your financial plan or your portfolios are built out. So again, if you have questions about that type of analysis on risk, or what you've put into your 401k, or even questions on the planning you've done outside of it, if you're looking for additional education, we're here to help. Again, no cost to any employee for any of the plans that we help service. That's just one of the things that we do here to help the participants not only become better educated, but hopefully make their accounts grow quicker and become more of a critical piece for their 401k, for their retirement planning going forward. So again, we hope this was helpful. We didn't really get any questions right now, so if you think of one afterwards, please feel free to contact us either through our, again, 480-494-2750, or go to our website or email addresses, or if you want to, you can always stop in as well. That's what we're here to help. So anyway, we very much appreciate your time today, and we'll be looking forward to doing this in the fourth quarter as well, with hopefully just as an interesting topic as the one we presented today. So anyway, thanks again, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.